All right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl. I'm here with my good friends Dan and Catherine, Karen, Christina, and Carmen. Excuse me. And today we're going to be talking about, we're starting a new book with, it's called The Wisdom of Sundays by Oprah Winfrey. Does anybody have the physical copy of the book that they can hold up by chance? No? I think everybody has the Kindle version or the ebook version. That's what I ended up getting. So I think, well, in our Facebook group, we have a picture of it, and I'm sure you can Google it if you want to see a picture of the book. Maybe at some point I'll get the physical book during our discussion. But today we're going to talk about the first chapter. And but before I get going with that, just for those of you who are watching this as a recording, there'll be some links below this video where you can connect with us. You can jump over into our Facebook group and participate with us. Of course, if you want to jump on here live with us on this conference, you can go to zoom.saturdaymorningmastermind.com, and that has the full instructions for participating with us via live video or via phone. So with that, guys, I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we will jump into our discussion of chapter 1 of this book. So jump out, guys.
Hey everyone, Christina Irving here from in Northeast Tennessee, and I'm really excited about this book.
Dan Sissick in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we're in a cold spell, and we even had a little bit of snow flurries yesterday, which got everybody in Vegas all like jazzed. And I've lived here 42 years, and it's like, oh, okay, wow, whoopee. Sorry, but I've lived here too long, I guess. And missed everybody. I've been gone for like the last 4 weeks due to work scheduling and stuff. So I'm very happy to be back and amongst my friends, and missed you guys all, so looking forward to the discussion and what we can get out of it.
I keep trying to click my mute button on my little tiny picture, and it just goes. I'm Karen Lohoff. I've been resenting you, Dan, resenting the heck out of you, because I come on here early in the morning, first person, and nobody's in sight, nobody's around. And then I realize, yeah, he's hiding behind his work again. Well, I was in Phoenix yesterday. I mean, I'm kind of in the Phoenix area all the time. I was actually in Mesa. I was at the ER with fleas. My son left me a couple of, well, left me with 3 puppies. I ended up with 2 puppies during the week, and the one cute little dog, and it kept lifting its rear leg and just scratching like hell. And I thought, man, what's going on with this thing? And then the other dog started to scratch too. And a couple of days ago, I noticed what appeared to be mosquito welts, and I thought, you know, those mosquitoes, if they're getting too small for me to see, then I'm really in trouble with my eyesight. And then I thought, well, it could be fleas. Oh, you never know what I'm going to say, do you? So I'm probably moving. I think I told you last time I thought I was moving up to Kornfield, where Senator John McCain and his family live. And I'm actually thinking more of probably moving to the Tucson area. If I do that, then I'll have a big breakfast one morning, and I'll fly in. We'll all just sit there at the table, and we'll just have this big, giant film fest. I have a brother who's a videographer. I'll have him come down, and he can just do the whole deal. So I'll try and be quiet the rest of the meeting. I'm still manic, obviously.
Good morning. This is Catherine in Boulder, Colorado, and looking forward to this book. It's looks like a lot of wisdom. I've read, from reading the first chapter, I think I've read most of these authors. Maybe not every one of them, but a lot of them. So it'll be good to revisit some of those lessons, because sometimes we forget stuff.
Did you want to jump out and introduce yourself, Carmen? No, maybe she had to step away or something. Okay. All right, guys. So chapter 1 of this book is entitled Awakening. And Oprah kind of starts this chapter out by talking about, she has a quote here. It says, spirituality for me is recognizing that I am connected to the energy of all creation, that I am part of it, and it is part of me. And she kind of starts out with where she was talking to a spiritual teacher called Carolyn Miss on the Oprah Winfrey show. And she said they were in this discussion talking about spirituality and awakening and that sort of thing. And she realized that the audience wasn't really following what they were talking about. And and so one of the biggest things that she kind of learned from that instance was that everybody is on a kind of a different path of where they are with their spirituality and their inner journey. And so this is kind of like this first chapter, she kind of explores what different teachers have expressed to her over the past however long she's been doing these Super Soul Sunday events, and has kind of just shared a little bit of wisdom from each one of these authors or leaders. I'm not sure if all of them are authors, but they're all people that many of us recognize as authors or as personal development speakers or spiritual speakers or that sort of thing. So, when I first heard about this book, I thought it was going to be a little bit different. I thought maybe it was going to be like she interviews like one person for each chapter, and it was going to be like all of their wisdom for each one. But then when I got the book, I realized it was a little bit different, where it's like one topic, and then she shares wisdom from multiple different people relating to that particular topic. So it's just a really interesting way of looking at things. And I can't remember if it was somewhere in this chapter or if it was something else that I read where it was something along the lines of just recognizing that you can learn something by just seeing things in a different way. And so I think that's just a really interesting it's a really interesting chapter, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of things that I'm kind of like, I never thought of it that way. And that was one of the things that was kind of introduced to us, that there was, just to remember that, we're all on a different path. We all have different understandings of the way that the world and the universe and spirituality and religion and everything works. And when we recognize that, then we actually can be open to learning from somebody else. So that's super powerful. So what do you guys think when you first kind of picked this book up? And I know not everybody's had a chance to read it, because we've only had it for we just learned about it this past week. But who has had an opportunity to read the first chapter? Maybe we should start there.
Okay, Christina, come on.
Yeah, I had a chance to read it. I kind of expected the same thing that you did. I thought it was going to be sort of an author or a leader per chapter. So, and then I thought maybe this is just the way the first chapter is. I haven't looked through the rest of the book yet, but from looking at the names of the chapters, it appears to be that it's going to follow the same sort of a thing, which is interesting. It's not what I expected, but it's interesting. So I look forward to it. I was trying to figure out which one was my favorite of because there's quite a few of them that she covers in this first chapter, and I was trying to figure out which ones were my favorite, but I haven't decided yet.
I don't think most of the chapters really is kind of like get around the one interview with the one person. Right now you're getting into like the beginning of the book, but Oprah's one of the best storytellers we have, so she'll give you the backdrop to her coming to whatever that topic is, and then she'll weave in whoever the conversation is highlighting for that discussion. as the book goes on. But I think it's really kind of hard to tell because, to be honest with you, I've gone through several chapters, and I can't remember if I'm in the introduction of chapter 1 or chapter 2. But anyway, I do believe chapter 1 mainly is focusing around basically awakening to spirituality. And I think for me, this is very kind of profound because I was thinking, about my awakening to spirituality and consciously awakening to spirituality. I think I would add in the word consciously. And for me, I think it was a little, I was taken back by how she was describing a spirituality, and that is the connection to all around us. And last night I was kind of listening to it back, and I was thinking, really, we're talking about presence, presence in your life, presence in the moment, in each moment of your life. And that has certainly been a journey for me because, I don't know what it is, but me and being fully present in every moment of my life certainly is a new phenomenon for me. And she was talking about presence and a connection to all. And it's so ironic because last night I happened to watch an interview, probably one of the last interviews that she did with Maya Angelou, which happened to be, I think it was a Super Soul Sunday interview. And in the interview, she asked Maya, "What is your definition of God?" And Maya Angelou said, "All. God is in all things. All." And so I hearken back to that interview when she was talking about awareness to spirituality, and Oprah said, it's the connection and awareness to all. I kind of envision it as a dance with everything and every gift and every blessing and every energy that God has put on this earth for us.
So, does it look like I'm sitting in the middle of Greenland? I can't tell you how many shirts I have on. This is my coat. This is my winter coat. Let's see. I read probably the first chapter, if that's what it was, on Amazon. When Christina first brought this up, because man, I dig on this kind of stuff. I just love it. And who's that eating your hand? Is that Catherine? Is that something eating your hand?
No, she just buries her head in you're petting her, like she leans up against you and just buries her forehead against you.
Oh, I was going to say she likes to be checked under the chin. She was bringing that. That's pretty cool. If you don't mind, Samantha, what I'd like to address a little bit is Carolyn Myss, if that would be okay. Because as we talk about opening up to spirituality and realizing our spiritual journey, it's so funny. You think when you're raised in a church, and especially when you're raised in a church that's the only true church, as far as you know, and as far as they know, you think you have all the spirituality in the world, and then you start running into someone like Carolyn Myss, and this was in 1992. I had just gotten divorced from 19 years of marriage to my first husband, and I was living on my own in this really cool townhome that had a loft, and it wasn't really quite a loft. It was just kind of a corner tucked away in the slant of the roof, and I had a ladder in the house, and I would get up there and I would curl over, how the roof kind of slants weird, and I'd look down on the rest of my empire, which was probably less than 800 square feet, and it was just really just such a neat experience. And here I am, used to a big sprawling ranch house on an acre, and two boys wildly running around and doing crazy things, and a husband who'd come in pouting from work. Anyway, so on Sundays there was another gal in the townhome neighborhood I was in, and she had an even smaller townhome than I did. She didn't have a loft, but she had invited a few people in, and I invited my friend in. And I remember we were sitting on the floor. That's when I had enough limberness to my limbs that I could, sit down on the floor, sit up to the coffee table that she had, and we had Carolyn Miss on cassette tape. And if you've never met Carolyn Miss or you've never seen her, you may not realize that she's such a funny ass. It would be so cool to see her at an improv, because she's one of those kinds of people. It's just as dry as can be, and she's just as sober and somber as Mother Teresa ever was. And yet the things that pop out of her mouth are just amazing. And she was telling these experiences about healing people over the phone with Norman Sheehy backing her up. And I thought, is this wild? Is this wild? I mean, she must think that she must have touch with the divine. Of course, at that time, I didn't have the good sense to call God the divine or all or anything. I think all is perfect. And by the way, in all, Christina mentioned all the positive things. Yesterday, I was actually having a fairly good day. I get rides to and from all of my medical trips because I'm clinically insane. And so I just take advantage of the system. It's just called gaming the system. So I had this driver, and I'm bipolar, and he's confessing in the car that he's 17 years free of drugs, all drugs, pharmacy drugs, because he was bipolar too. And I go, that's what my book's about. Can I interview you? Could you be my first podcast person? And so I'm having this great time because he's telling me, he was praying for this, and here comes this woman. He says, "Are you a writer?" And I thought, well, I write, and I'm going to publish a book. I suppose I could say yes to that question. So he said, sure. He said, this is exactly what I've been looking for. So he drops me off. And then I realize that I'm in an adult situation. I live so much by myself that I can be however I happen to be in whatever mood I am. And if I'm cursing at God, then I'm going around the house saying, if you were a woman, you wouldn't treat me like this. Oh, pardon me. Well, I just did that right into the speaker. Anyway, I walk into the ER room, and you know how it is. I mean, it's like you're kind of the least worm in the group. Everybody else is up there obediently opening their mouths so that they can take your temperature and do your blood pressure. And they always have to take my blood pressure 3 times, or they're certain that I'm in the midst of a stroke right before them. And so anyway, I think I'm off track here. I'm pretty sure I'm off track. So I'm going to hang up and call back in.
You were talking about Carolyn Miss, dear.
Well, Carolyn Miss is probably one of the most interesting persons on the planet. I mean, the way she found out that she was connected with the spirit, that she found out that she was a spiritual healer, is the funniest story. Here you are laughing, you're cracking up, you're looking around the room, and you're hoping you're not the only person that thinks this is really, really funny. Because I'm probably a polar opposite to Catholics. I was raised thinking, who would believe stuff like that? And sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, and I know over the course of years we're going to have lots of Catholic listeners, but I mean, truth is truth. And I used to think, because I would read books and they would be so esoteric about, how Mother Mary, and I'm thinking, Mother Mary, what? We have women? What? We acknowledge that there are women who might be spiritual, who might have a place in the role of Christianity, you can talk about a woman. Anyway, okay, obviously I'm off track again. I think I'll stay off for a little while and see if I can sober up.
So Dan, have you not had an opportunity to read the book yet?
No, I have to still get it and figure out what way and what I'm going to do and how I want it. If I want a real physical book, or cause I'm like Samantha, I like to actually read it, or if I want to try and either download it on my computer or get a Kindle version or something like that. But based on a little bit of what you're saying, I actually kind of agree with you when you were saying about, that she brought the idea that Maya Angelou said that God is all, because I purposely believe that he is all that he's in, of, and everything, because he's the one that created everything, or that's how I look at it. But I mean, people say the universe, or infinite intelligence, however you look at it, and that we are, yes, all connected to it, and that we have ways of how we can connect to it and all that. And also in how I've been brought up, along with that he is all, I put that together with I am. I am, meaning he's everything, and in that that's where I think to get back and get connected, that's where we really need to go to, is to get ourselves back and connected, and in alignment, for lack of a better word, for what we're designed or purposed for. That's kind of where, going along lines with what you guys were saying about that he is all.
So I'm curious what everybody thinks, because I wanted to hone in on the concept of being present, fully present in every moment, and what that means to everyone.
One big giant pain.
I think it means not being distracted and multitasking, and like doing mastermind Zooms and working the desk all at the same time. It's rare that people, unfortunately, it's rare for most people to pull into the present moment and not having their mind either in the past or the present. I mean, the past or future. People seem to operate mostly out of fear and anxiety and regret and, all those sorts of emotions that seem to drive people through their day. And I think that's, long ago, they called it meditation. But meditation is different than just being present in the moment with someone and actually connecting energetically with them. And if you see energy, you can actually see the energies combining when people are present with each other. They're feeling the same things often, even if they're not empathic. When two souls connect like that and are truly communicating, other people feel it energetically. So, but it's difficult for a lot of people to do that. And I hope that she interviews Byron Katie at some point through this book, because again, I know I throw that tool out there all the time, but I give it to people daily because they need it. So that's why I keep throwing it out here. Because anytime that you get out of that present moment and can't find your way back in, that's a really helpful tool sometimes to get over the fear or anxiety or whatever it is that's keeping you from enjoying. if we don't take time to do that, and if we don't effectively communicate with people in that way, I think we wind up living a very superficial kind of life that doesn't ever really get down to the heart of things. It's just sort of that minion, go through the motion kind of life.
Since I'm named Chatty Cathy this morning, I think I'll share another little illustration of that. I'm currently married 20 years to a man I haven't seen for the last 17 and a half years, which is a real thrill. This is how to conduct a safe, non-productive marriage. But in the interim, I've had a sweetheart that, oh my gosh, I've realized I fell in love with him before I even saw him. I heard him make a smart-ass remark behind me to somebody that I was kind of revering at the moment, and it kind of took him down a peg or two, and it gave me a chance to find him more real. And when I turned around, I saw this guy who looked like Shrek, except that he was kind of pale, and he kind of looked like a giant to me. Anyway, he's supposedly been dead the last at least 5 years. And about 7 months after I had heard someone say, "Did you know he died?" And of course, I'd been pondering that considerably at length. And I hadn't been able to find him online. No obituary, no evidence. In Arizona, you can't get a death certificate unless you're married or, a son or daughter or mother or father, or, have big bucks, none of which I managed to fit the category of. And so I had lots of fantasies that he wasn't really dead. He was in a coma somewhere. He didn't know what was going on, all this kind of stuff. And I walked into a supermarket, and there's this man, and he looks like he's been completely drained of all blood. He has broomsticks for arms. Now, I'm telling you, this man, when I saw him as a giant, he was, one of those hefty dudes. And so I'm seeing this guy, and I'm thinking, well, he's about the right height, and he's got the right color of hair, and no smile on his face. I mean, I seem to tend to enjoy acerbic people with the sense of humor that's really dry, and a lot of people don't get. A lot of people don't realize that they're funning you. And at the time, I was fortunate enough to have a therapist. I've had a therapist. I've needed a therapist from the time I was born, and I've had a therapist for about 5 minutes. It was during that 5-minute period of time when I had a therapist, and I went in and I said, "You got to tell me if I'm completely delusional or illusional or whatever it is. This is the strangest thing, because I just, it's just weird." And so I described to her that, he had these broomstick arms, and he was really skinny, and he'd been really big, and he had the kind of haircut. When you pay attention to a man, and they don't generally have the most ideal grooming. I mean, he was a taxi driver. He owned my cab that I drove, and you've all seen taxi drivers, and we know that they don't always have their hair trimmed. But I'd seen him with his hair trimmed, and I had actually walked around behind him, and I noticed that his hair was trimmed that same way. So I'm telling her all this, and I'm telling her how absurd it is that, that this man could possibly be the same man unless he had been in a coma. And that, of course, would be why he didn't run up to me and scoop me up heftily into his arms, throw me up at the ceiling and all that kind of stuff. And she told me a lot about how you can tell whether you're present or not. She said, "You're not delusional, that's for damn sure." Delusional people can't report on the colors of things, the name badge, the haircut, the size of arms, the other people walking to and from, the non-smiling, all this kind of stuff. And so to me, when I think about being in the present, well, look at Kareem has arisen from the dead. There's hope. There's hope. My sweetheart could rise from the dead too. Ooh, that's good. I'm going to get off. Thanks.
Hello.
Welcome back, Kareem. Good to have you back on.
Thank you.
Oh, today we're talking about the first chapter in The Wisdom of Sundays by the book by Oprah Winfrey made. And the first chapter talks about awakening, and we're on the topic of presence right now. And, Karen, I think that's an interesting story that you shared, just kind of describing what presence is and being in that moment. And, and I agree with you. I think that when we are present and we are mindful of what's going on in the moment, is that we are more aware and we see more versus being caught up in, like what Catherine was talking about, caught up in the past or caught up in the future, which is, either worrying or regretting or, those emotional things that drag us down. And when we're present, we tend to be more at peace. And I think that's a big thing. And of course, this chapter talking about awakening, I feel like awakening is kind of that realizing that you can be just in the moment without thinking about the future and without thinking about the past, because that's where that peacefulness resides. It's hard to be peaceful when you're worried about whether you're going to pay the bills, and it's hard to be peaceful when you're sad about somebody who has passed, or if you're upset about something that you said to someone or something that somebody said to you, or I think that's kind of for me, when we talk about awakening, it is kind of like opening yourself up to realizing that is possible, that you don't have to let your life be all about these worries and frustrations and anxieties and expectations and all of that kind of thing, but you can just actually sit in the moment and look around you and be grateful for all that you have and everything that you can experience right here and right now. Because realistically, I mean, in my opinion, this is all we really have, is this moment right here. We don't have the future. We don't have the past, because the past is already done. The future hasn't happened yet. It's right here and right now that we actually have. And the more time that we can spend in this moment, the more at peace we actually feel. So that's kind of my thoughts on being present and then awakening. There's so many good things from these different people that Oprah interviewed. I wish we had time to just like read a little bit from each one and then discuss it, but I don't. There's so many in this chapter.
I wanted to kind of jump out and piggyback off your point, Samantha. I know for me, I actually have a hard time being in the presence of, and it's something I'd like to do more, because I tend to agree. I think the times when I have been present, I have been at peace. I have not focused on anything, and it has been for lack of a better word, it's been a relaxing moment. I'm not tense. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not, and it's something I would like to strive more towards. But also, I think in reference to Oprah doing this book, I think in that first either opening chapter or introduction or whatever, I think that was a way of her helping people that as they go through this book to remember to be in that presence and be in that moment and let it speak the way it's supposed to speak and carry you through. Because look at how often because we don't see that modeled for us very often from anybody, from our parents to our friends, family, to coworkers, to wherever we're at. What's everybody do? Oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine, but oh, I've got this, I've got that, this, that. Everybody's throwing things out rather than in this moment, taking time to be appreciative and enjoy that moment that you have right then and there, that yes, you're at work, and yes, these people are here, and that that day nobody called in sick, so that way everybody can do their job to get their job done, and you can focus on that and be appreciative of that. Or you're at home, and in that moment that, say, like, for a lot of you have dogs and cats, I don't have any animals except my fish, can enjoy that moment of the little things that they do and stuff like that. Or for somebody with kids, like you with your grandkids, those times when you have them there, when they're doing the, little things that, because you haven't seen them for a little while, and then you just notice that, oh, wow, look what they just did. And you just are totally in that moment, and you can totally revel in it and just forget about everything else and focus on them and focus on you and just help them to totally enjoy that moment. How much better things would be if people really stopped, like they say, stop to smell the flowers, and enjoy the beauty and what that moment brings.
Something popped up for me, Dan, when after I stopped talking and you started talking, and isn't it interesting? Well, I don't know. In my experience, like at my work, I go to work and we have a moment, and I'm standing there with another person, and the conversation starts. And usually it ends up going towards, what somebody is frustrated about, either in their life or something that they're frustrated about with other people at their job or other customers or whatever it is. What if we had a conversation where we were just present in the moment, and we only were discussing like that peacefulness of the moment, or what was great about that moment right there? What would that conversation look like? How would it be different? What do you guys think? Well, what would happen in a conversation like that versus the typical conversations we tend to have?
I've had a lot of these at work where I talk to people and say, how was your vacation, or how you doing? And they say, good, I wasn't here. I think the problem is they're not present. They're always thinking off. Well, when I get off work, I'm going to do this. In 2 weeks, I'm going to do that. I have a vacation. I think if they were present, A, they'd be a lot happier, and B, they'd realize the only thing you can be is present, because even if you're thinking about the future or the past or different events that have happened, you're still doing it now, and you can't do it anytime but now. So if people say there's a good time coming, there's a good time there in the future, I'd say, no, it's in the present. And then we wouldn't be worrying so much.
I think we, sometimes we can overcomplicate things. And I think for me, being present is simply choosing to suspend judgment so that you can receive all that is possible from all in the moment. That's it. It's a choice not to be judging everything. Hence, and in short, that just means it's a choice not to be dealing with so many things that you can't receive because your bandwidth is taken up on all this other stuff. So then you miss the blessings of all. You miss the blessings of the peace that you get when you are awakened, when you are fully present in your spirituality. And I think that's another key too, because I think that would probably be another question that I would want to explore, which would be, spiritual. Like when you hear the word spirituality, I know for me, for the longest time, I had a block just because, I'm a Southern girl raised in a church, that spirituality means that it is not of God. And so for me, I had a block of even being present because I was choosing to judge the blessings around me because of the dogma that I'd been taught, right? Is everybody frozen, or are y'all just really thinking about that?
Now, thinking about that, but Because I was going to go back to a little bit what Samantha and Kareem were saying. It's interesting that you both kind of brought up how to push those things out. Well, you too, Christina. But how often are people willing to put themselves in the present? It's, like I said, it's a choice and it's a decision that we have to make. But it almost seems like people, and I hate to say it this way, revel in all their issues and all the things going on and all this, and going back to either, like you say, judging or comparing or trying to make and I've done it too. Don't get me wrong, I've done it just as much as anybody else. That woe is me or my life or this, rather than, like you said, being in that moment and being able to be open and receive the blessings of that moment that can then lead to more blessings as your day goes on, because you're being in those moments and you're doing what you're doing. You're not putting out judgments. You're not putting out stuff. You're looking at it and letting it be what it is in that moment, in that time frame. I wonder how much that would change the world, and if it would help lead to changes that actively, I believe it would lead to change that would actively make the world better.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I just wanted to be clear that receiving a blessing in the moment, it might not feel like a blessing in the moment. Okay, it might feel like it's something that sucks, or it might make you angry, or it might hurt. That's because you're present in the moment, but you don't know what God, or whatever you refer to God, the spirit, divine, whatever. You don't know what has in store for you in the next moment. And I totally agree with what you're saying, Dan. If everybody would just make a choice to suspend judgment in the moment and receive, then there would be so much more compassion in this world. And if with more compassion, there would be, the expressions of love, there would be, the hate would be mitigated, the misunderstanding, the divisiveness, all this other stuff would certainly be suspended.
Well, I can tell you what happens when you have a conversation like that, because I had one this morning. I have a lot of them. I think it depends on who your friends are, Dan. Like, I have a lot of friends that are in the moment. And we have beautiful moments together. And this morning, just for instance, I was speaking with someone on Telegram in Turkey, a friend in Turkey, and he asked me how I was doing, and I said, I'm very blessed because I'm warm and it's snowing. I was so enjoying the warmth of that moment, looking out the window. It was hella snowing and cold out there. And I was just oh, I'm just so grateful to be warm right now, to have a roof over my head, and the wind isn't slicing me down and all of that. And it was, he felt that warmth. It was we shared that moment. And it was a much better conversation than a lot of other things I could have said or focused on. So I think most of the time, unless we're actively bleeding out because we've just been hit by a bus or something, the moment, the present moment is normally pretty good if we'll just pay attention to it. We're normally safe and okay, and everything is intact, and there's some shit that might not work, but that's life and part of the blessing. So and you're so right, it can feel like an inconvenience in the moment. The blessings can, and you don't see them until later on. But I'm just shocked and intrigued and enamored and just at how this all works. Like, I don't know who God is. I think it's probably a they, not a him or a her or an it, or, you know. But they've put together a pretty amazing system here. And it's very, very interesting, and to just watch it all happen, you know, sometimes I just sit and think, who thought this shit up? I mean, really.
That's so funny. You know, I wanted to mention, Christina, when you were talking about judgment, we have this kind of like judgment that comes up, you know, and one of the people that Oprah mentions in this chapter is Michael Singer. And I just listened to a book from him called The Surrender Experiment. And in there, he talks about that voice in your head that is constantly judging every single thing. And I just wanted to read a little bit about what he put, or from his excerpt from this chapter. And he says, there's something we listen to on a regular basis. The problem is we think it's us. So, for example, you look at a vase and it says, the thing that we think is us says, that's a very interesting shape, but I don't really like the color that much. It reminds me of my grandmother's vase. And then all of a sudden we have somebody narrating and talking inside our head. That is not you, right? And then Oprah says, right, those are all the thoughts about the vase. And Michael says, and more, as I watch that, I realize it never shuts up. It just talks about everything. It judges everything. It thinks about everything. And, you know, and I think that when we can become aware of all that mumbo jumbo that is happening in our mind, is then we can let go of it and realize, okay, that's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo that we're saying to ourselves about everything. And I think that that's a huge part of what I consider awakening, is that awakening to, there's not just this whole bunch of thoughts, there's this underlying being inside of yourself that can be aware of those thoughts, and that those thoughts aren't actually you. They're just all that mumbo jumbo that you've learned in life, or that you've been exposed to or experienced, or you know, somebody has taught you to be in that way. You know, just like with you know, as we're growing up, we learn different, you know, sayings, and those are just things that we've heard, and they come up when we are in a situation where, oh, okay, well, you know, like that saying, money doesn't grow on trees. You know, when we're frustrated about money or whatever, or the kid comes over and he's like, oh, I want a PlayStation, and the first thing that pops in your head, well, money doesn't grow on trees, even though, you know, that's like the most ridiculous thing that was ever said, but yet it pops up in your head, right? And so it's just like a thing that is said in your head that you're repeating from the past or from wherever. But it's the same thing about with everything, is we're constantly, you know, judging things, whatever it is. Like, I can look over here, and over here I have my I have a little shelf, and it has a bunch of plants on it, and on that I can look at each plant and I can go, oh, well, that one, you know, it's got some yellow leaves on it, and, you know, it probably is getting too much water or not enough sun or whatever. So I'm sitting here judging it, right, about what's going on with that. And instead I could sit here and instead just be present in the moment, not thinking any specific thing about any one of those plants, and just be observing them. And I was listening, what am I listening to right now on my way to work? It's Mind Body Philosophy. It's like one of the great courses on Audible. And in this particular one, he's talking about a number of different religious philosophies and in general when it comes to the separation of mind and body. And he was talking about, I think it was Hinduism and Atman. And that Atman is that observer that is the higher self, or the spiritual self, that can that when you recognize that there is that spiritual self that is there, that you can like let go of all this mumbo jumbo that is causing us this pain in our lives, and that's kind of the goal, is to become more of the observer of versus the talker, the constant talker. I guess that's what it is. But anyway, what else? There was something else. Oh, okay. Well, that can be for another day, because we're getting close to the top of the hour. So everybody jump out and share some final thoughts on this, and then we can wrap up for today.
Before we leave this idea of everything being a thought and conditioned and all that kind of thing, I do want to also bring in that we have lots of attendants. I happen to call the major of mine the mastermind of invisible counselors, but I have finally opened myself, despite the fact that it seems to me more a Catholic idea than anything else. I have opened myself to the idea that there might be angels. And, there isn't anyone I've ever spoken to in my whole entire existence of this life plane than God. And I happen to call him Father, so he's kind of at the top of the tier. But a lot of times I realize that some of these snarky little remarks you get, these snarky little thoughts, are an aunt or an uncle or, somebody who died in high school. They're still, feeling free to use that conversation. It's just a lot of fun. The more you realize that we are truly surrounded. I mean, when you think about all the people who've ever lived upon the earth, whether it's hundreds of years, thousands of years, millions of years, whatever it is, if you only consider them and you don't consider even any of the aliens, then, or the doggy poos, isn't that a pretty dog? There's just a lot of us crowded in on this planet, and I really love the idea, and I don't know if this is a scriptural idea or just exactly what it is, but that in our spirit form, we could congregate together, a whole ton of us, on the head of a pin, and you think about that, and you think, I mean, it gives you a lot more freedom when you think about getting around that way. It makes it possible to believe that, yeah, if you get out of your body, you could probably zip pretty fast. So I don't know if this has anything to do with our conversation. Karen Lohoff signing off and hoping you'll come back and, accept me when I'm not high as a manic person.
I was going to say, for me, lately I've been a lot of times when I get done with my day and stuff and coming home, I've just wanted to be kind of in the moments and just kind of shut everything out, so I can kind of just be in the moment of just being home and just not having anything really going on, and kind of appreciate just that time, a little bit of time. I'm realizing how much more and more I like that when I have been at work and come home and had I just want to kind of shove everything out now, and and I think it's helping me as I do go out a little bit more to be able to think more about trying to be in the moments and in those presents, hopefully a little more consciously, but definitely I think a little bit more subconsciously, and how I try to react when I try to react and am in those moments. But it's funny how, it's taken me all these years to kind of get to that point and realize that, by being in the presence and putting myself into that mindset, it does make a difference, and it helps, relieve some of that stress and some of that, anxiety or stuff of, well, I did that in the past, I should have done that way and acted this way, or in the future of, okay, how am I going to come up with this to pay that bill, or how am I going to finagle that, or how am I, it, like Christina said, and like, you guys have said, it really de-stresses, and, that's part of what's, going on with everybody's bodies. That's part of what, where a lot of our some of our ailments come from, is because of all the stress that we put on ourselves because of all this crap, rather than giving our bodies that true, little bits of time to rest and be peaceful besides when we're asleep, when the body, is doing the repair work that we need from the day's work and stresses and all the stuff going on during the day. So the more we can be in the presence and keep that stress at bay, I think it also helps raise ourselves up to, like you guys are saying, a higher level, a better plane that allows us more freedom. And I think that's some of what I'm learning, and maybe some of what's being brought out just in this first little bit from the book today.
Well, I think there's so many levels of awakening that happen. And like for me, when I went out of body at 2 years of age, that was an abrupt awakening. Like suddenly I realized, oh, I'm here and my body is down there, which means that's not me. So that was an abrupt awakening at 2, and it certainly shaped my life. I think the reason it's important not to believe your thoughts, I have the bumper sticker. I really do have the bumper sticker on my car that says you do not have to believe your thoughts. And the reason that's important is because just for a moment, think about, if it were up to you to consciously keep your heart beating, would you stay alive for more than a few minutes? Or would you forget? Would you get off focus and forget to have your heart beating? Right? So think about the trillions, more than trillions, I don't even know how to define the number of things that are happening in your body at this very moment. Every cell, every organ, it's astronomical. The chemistry things happening, the electrical things happening, the nutritional, it's mind-blowing. So your body, your mind, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to call it the mind, is like the most powerful computer that we haven't even imagined yet, right? It's stronger. It handles more transactions per minute than Visa, MasterCard, So when you're having a conversation or an experience, your mind is constantly, like that computer is scanning past, present, probably future, who knows, for information that matches up with that information. It's almost like an automatic search that happens. And that's why those damn things that your auntie said can pop into your head, because your computer has picked up on that shit and connected it with the moment, right? So that's why we can't believe it, right? Because it's not, it's just part of the computer programming. That's why it's important to really figure out, to be in the moment and really figure out how you feel about things, and not just what the computer happens to pick up, but you can't believe all that. Plus, we're energetic beings. We're picking up on things from each other all the time. We don't know if that's our thought or somebody down the street's thought, quite honestly. You just don't know. Have you ever been in a perfectly fine moment and then suddenly you feel like you're going to die or something? Like, we pick up shit from other people, even whether we call ourselves empaths or not. So awakening, once you realize that you're not your body, that you're a spiritual being, however you want to define that, or you want to through Catholic eyes or Hindu eyes or whatever eyes, once you have that awakening, I think it starts the journey, at least. And then, but it's like a moment by moment awakening. It's like people talk about, oh, they became enlightened in like an instant. No, that shit doesn't happen. Like, that takes lots of lifetimes and experiences, and maybe it happens multiple times in one lifetime, but it's not. It's like, that's one thing I love about Oprah. She used that term, that aha moment, Those are those little enlightenment moments, those little awakening moments, if you want to call it that. And they just keep building on each other. And it doesn't matter how, quote, enlightened you get, like, you still, new things are revealed all the time. So it's a journey. Enjoy it, guys.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a marathon. It's a journey. And there's been references throughout the discussion about being worried about things, bills or what somebody said or what, all that kind of stuff. And I totally get that. I will say that through my journey over the past couple of years, as I've gone through, I've gone through a class called Pay Me What I'm Worth, and the more that I've learned about really my choices, I think it's easier not to have to feel the need to get ready, to get myself, to convince myself, to decide, to force myself. Because once I made a choice to, in life in general, be more present, and to suspend the judgment and to suspend the ability of doubt, guilt, shame, and worry to consume my every moment. It's weird, but I don't know. The being present part is just kind of the natural gift, if you will, of suspending all that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in any of that, but the more that I've made the choice to live that kind of principle, the less I've had to work at trying to be present in the moment when trying to receive. And I think that it's small nuance, but from some of the conversation in the discussion, I wanted to definitely point out, because please understand that if you're trying to force yourself, or if you're trying to get ready to do something, or want to try to think and hoping for doing something, all of that is drawing from your bandwidth, that kind of, that, you have a battery source, if you will. And all of that is drawing from that. And it actually is removing you, making you further from being able to be present in the moment. That's all I want to say.
That is a huge point there, Christina. And I feel like when you're trying to do something, you're already judging. You're judging yourself that you aren't doing it, or you're judging yourself that you're not doing it good enough or whatever. And I think that the key is just recognizing what's going on. It's just recognizing and being present in that moment of recognizing whatever you're doing or not doing, and not judging it. And it's okay. And just reminding yourself it's okay, because it's in those moments where we recognize something and then we get upset about it because we're not this, or we are that, or we won't stop doing, or we keep doing, whatever. And then that takes us into that spin of, that judging ourselves, or judging other people, or judging our situation, or whatever. And then we're back in that worry, frustration, anxiety spot that we don't necessarily want to be in, right? So just recognizing and just being present in that moment of recognizing, or observing, and realizing that you don't have to one way or another. You can just be. So with that, guys, this has been a great chat. It really has. It's been wonderful. And Kareem, did you want to add anything before we wrap up for today? Or are you just listening in? You still there? Or Karen, jump out. I see you unmuted.
Well, I was going to say that Kareem's not even listening. I mean, Kareem's setting himself up as a model. We can all look at him and maybe do a, what do you call those things, where the person shouts out, 500, 500, 500, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 7, 700, 700.
Oh my God, Karen, you're so funny. Alrighty. Well, anyway, guys, all right. So thanks for joining us this week. And for those of you who are watching this as a recording, there's going to be some links below the video here on YouTube where you can connect with us on Facebook. You can find out how to join us on these live discussions, listen in, find the recordings, whatever. And if you just want to know, just go to Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook or mindsetmasterycollective.com, and it will take you directly to our Facebook group where you can participate in these discussions. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing weekend. And next week we're going to be talking about Chapter 2, and it is about intention, I think. Let me open it. Yep, Chapter 2 is on intention. So let's read that chapter and see what each of these different people who share their wisdom with us have to say, and then we can come back here and discuss each of those kinds of things. So, and see what insights you gain from it. So, all right, have a great weekend. Bye for now.
Bye.